All right, let's do it.
Trying to get in my feminist mode. Let's go!
What I do for a living is take risks.
I have a brain, I have a uterus, and they both work.
I'm not worried about who feels threatened by me.
You cannot do some of these things and keep your hair all nice.
Sometimes all you have to do is be brave.
I'm kind of a badass. I can handle it.
Don't let this be our final song.
For the first time, 2 women will co-anchor a national daily news program.
We're going to talk about some serious stuff today. Are you ready? Feminism.
If we free women, we free men. We free humanity.
We can do the work.
This team taught all America's children that playing like a girl means you're a badass.
It dawned on me that it was not just me.
Across the nation, a movement is rising.
You want me? Earn me!
I'm going to keep saying loud and clearly that I am a feminist.
We dream about things that don't even exist yet. We believe in our dreams.
Never stop believing that fighting for what's right is worth it.
We should be going around asking for 50% trade women on every job because we are 50% of the population.
Education is key to economic mobility for women.
To be able to elect African-American judges is vitally important to the project of our democracy.
What it takes is more people speaking up as far as the pay gap. Take action now.
The next chapter in American history is playing out before our eyes.
We're staying together.
And we're never turning back. Together, we are a movement, and we are unstoppable.
We are not alone.
We
are America.
We rise. We must be bold.
I'm Nancy Armstrong. Welcome to Build. Well, Makers is so excited to be here tonight at Build to help support the 4th Annual Gaines Conference. The Gaines Network, founded by Molly King and Ann Decker, is a virtual community connecting girls and women with a passion for STEM subjects to support, encourage, teach, and inspire. Let's have a round of applause for Molly King, Ann Decker, and this incredibly smart group of high school women. Tonight, we are delighted to have 2 amazing, accomplished role models for these young women, Nicole McKnight and Natalia Rossi. Ladies, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
So just a bit of an introduction. Nicole is a molecular and cell biologist who is currently the Director of Operations for BioLabs New York and is a co-founder of Keystone for Incubating Innovation in Life Sciences Network. And Natalia is a conservation biologist who heads up the Wildlife Conservation Society in Cuba, where she has worked for the last 9 years in coastal and crocodile conservation. Translation, she is wrangling crocodiles. So let's start there. Natalia, tell us about the work you're doing in Cuba and just how big are the crocodiles?
Well, the crocodiles are pretty big in Cuba. Not as big as aggressive. We are working with the Wildlife Conservation Society to protect species and critical habitats for conservation. Cuba has amazing biodiversity and very valuable rich ecosystems, and crocodiles are part of these ecosystems and are engineers of these wildlife ecosystems. Crocodiles, they have a species that only occurs in Cuba. It's called the Cuban crocodile. And we have been working to protect this species because it kind of shapes the forest, the mangrove forest, and the coasts in the country.
Great, thank you. And Nicole, can you tell us a bit about what you're working on in BioLabs New York?
Sure, yep. So BioLabs New York is a co-working space for startup companies that are in the biotherapeutics, biotech world. So you can think of us like WeWork, but with wet labs. For the companies who need to do experiments, but also want to be together, learn from each other. And so we rent out their lab benches to them on very flexible terms, and we can have up to 35 companies at once in our space, and then they get offices and conference rooms and a fun cafe, and they meet and learn from each other a lot. And we provide programming as well, so educational seminars for the entrepreneurs. Some of them are first-timers, and they actually invented something in their own lab, and they're trying to make a business out of it. So they need a lot of help and a lot of advice, and some of maybe this is their 6th company, and they sold their last one, and they're going to do it again. What makes these life science startup founders so passionate is that what they're doing is trying to bring something to the clinic, trying to find a cure for a disease or you know, a new medical device. And so, you know, the people are very engaged, very passionate and energetic, and it's hard, it's very difficult. It takes a long time and a lot of hard work, so you have to really push. And building BioLabs New York in a similar way has taken a lot of hard work.
Well, speaking of hard work, I'd be interested to know from both of you, let's start with you, Nicole, the genesis of these incredibly successful careers you've had in science. Can you think back to when you knew you were good in science, and how was that nurtured along the way?
Yep, so I am from Massachusetts. I grew up on the North Shore, and had the opportunity to go into Boston, go into Cambridge, see the labs. As you're driving down Massachusetts Avenue, you can actually see the biotech labs and the companies, and it's science on display, which is something we say at BioLabs. So being a scientist, to me, seemed like a very normal career path. And you know, in high school, I took AP Biology, and then I studied biology in college at the University of Chicago. And then what was so lucky for me is that I had the opportunity to work in labs after college in Cambridge, and I worked at a startup company in Kendall Square, and it was so much fun. I was employee number 7, and we had to do everything from, you know, taking all the UPS deliveries to designing the reception area to setting up the lab and building different rooms. And then we all together, I'd present my data to everything from the CEO all the way through to the lab technician. And so I caught the startup bug then, and knew that to do what I wanted to do, I needed to get an advanced degree. So I did my PhD in cellular and molecular biology. And I have to say I was lucky, you know, all the way through. I think we'll talk about this a bit more, but it was 50-50 girls and boys, then men and women, all the way through my PhD and postdoc. So it just felt very normal to be a scientist.
Great. Natalia?
Well, I am originally from Argentina, South America, and I always loved nature, animals, and I had this urge to protect nature. My parents didn't finish a university degree, but they were great influences in their love for hiking and being out there, and I was collecting every insect and, you know, having lots of cats and dogs and whatever animal I could rescue. So I had that love for nature for since I was a kid, but then I went on to study biology. It was for me natural to go through that career path. I did have a hiccup, but all of a sudden I quit for a year because I was doubting myself. Do I want to do this because I always wanted, or is it because I believe myself, told myself to do it? So I came back and I got my degree in Argentina, and then I did many volunteer positions at the beginning, so working for travel and food and from paleontology expeditions excavating dinosaurs to going to follow monkeys in my own country. And then I could go to Mexico to work on sea turtles. Was one of my dreams. And that path took me to apply to a scholarship to come to the US and got a scholarship to go to Columbia University and get a master's in conservation biology. Because back then in my country, we didn't have that area very developed. And then I continue on working at Columbia, and some of my professors were working in the Bronx Zoo-based Wildlife Conservation Society, and is here in New York as well. And I work for their Latin America program, and I engage very much in conservation in all Latin America region, and develop special interest for Cuba, where my organization was great in supporting me to go back to do research in my PhD, and I was working for them in studying crocodiles in Cuba, that new challenge. So that was my upbringing as a conservation biologist.
Well, speaking of upbringing, you know, we know from the research that girls experience a lot of discouragement in the STEM fields. We've seen that in all the research. And my question is, did you ever have any of those experiences, or were there any defining moments along the way where you were discouraged because of your gender, and how did you cope with that or deal with that?
Yeah, so as I said, you know, I think in biology, it seems to be very equal for quite a long time throughout the course of training and school. So, you know, it's 50-50, maybe even more women than men in both my PhD program and also what we call a postdoctoral training, which I did here in New York at Mount Sinai Hospital. I think some of you were there today. And, you know, that was really great to feel like my colleagues and the men and women, or the boys and girls who we were all studying together, we treated each other very, very well and very equal. And I am very confident that once we all get to those positions of leadership, then it will be even better than it is now. I will say that the generation in front of us, the women, had to work really hard, and it was very difficult for them. They were outnumbered. They had to work twice as hard. I'm sure they had it tough. Sometimes that can make them a little bit bitter towards the younger generation coming through, because, you know, we did have it a bit easier. So yeah, I experienced, you know, some stuff like that, but I do have to say that there is a problem then once you get to the phase beyond your training. So the phase beyond our postdoctoral training in biology, and women start to fall away. They call it the leaky pipeline. And I think then all of a sudden the women aren't seen as the professors or the lab heads. And it's also coinciding when you're in your 30s and maybe wanting to start a family. And so it means actually that then when you still look at the numbers of who the department heads are and the leaders in some of these academic institutions, and you know, the numbers are skewed.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. That's a great point. We'll talk about, Natalia, can you talk a little bit about the aspects of your job as a conservationist that are challenging for women, things that you had to overcome? What was it like the first time you went out with all the boys, and what do women bring to that experience?
Well, in the field, it can be harder for women in the sense that at the beginning, and depending on what species you are studying, for instance, the crocodile world is male-dominated in terms of researchers. Up until now, that is changing. So you have to prove that you're tough, that you're not afraid, that you're willing to go beyond. And then I have to do that. Luckily, I was not afraid, but I thought it shouldn't be the case that I have to, you know, swim with crocodiles and wrestle just to show that I am as tough as a guy. In other cases, you go and work in local communities where the culture in the countries that you work is very different to ours, and you have to deal with that machista culture. So sometimes in my own country, some of the men I was working with wouldn't look at me, wouldn't follow orders from me, especially a young student telling them what to do. I always struggle with that, and I try to, reason with colleagues, with the people, but it was definitely a challenge. But I do think we, as women, we brought a lot to the conservation field, and especially it's a complex field where you not only are studying an animal or a plant, you are working in a community where there are conflicts, where usually that species is either utilized or has some sort of conflict with humans. For instance, with turtles, the issue of bycatch, of accidental capture in fishing nets of sea turtles, but fishermen need to go there and fish. So you had to work in this complex environment that requires patience and perseverance, and it requires an understanding beyond on just only the science. And I found that my female colleagues, and so we were a wrecking force for that task.
So those female based leadership characteristics actually ended up being more effective in the field of conservation.
Exactly.
So that's interesting. In terms of talking about the barriers to women in science, Harvard Business Review did a study, and we typically think about the leaky pipeline and life choices as being things that push women out of science. And what they found was that it's really these unconscious biases that are present, and what I like to call the double bind, which is women are expected to demonstrate more masculine traits to prove effectiveness, but they're also expected to be feminine. But if you are too feminine, you are considered less competent, and if you are too masculine, you are unlikable. So what kind of unconscious biases do you see in your fields? Nicole, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I think a lot of this does come down to this unconscious, implicit ideas about what leadership looks like, what a startup CEO looks like, what a department chair in neuroscience looks like, we have to be conscious of that, and there's training, and these are all things that hopefully will become more normal. I will use an example of raising money for startup companies. So say you invented something in your lab and now you want to start a company and bring that thing to the clinic and commercialize it, we say. It's very difficult for women to get investment from the venture capital companies or the investors that money is critical for making it happen. And so the numbers, I mean, I'm not even going to say them because it's depressing. The percentage of women CEO, women-led companies that get funding, and I will say
you can say it.
It's like 4.4%.
Just to put that in context, it's 368 female-led companies that get funding out of 7,002 companies.
But that will get better when there are more women investors, and there are some great initiatives and some great groups, and also leading by example. So here in New York City, some of our rock star biotech startups most of them are led by women here. That's the norm. And that's all the way through to the big ones who get $44 million in their first round of funding, all the way through to some of my friends who are raising money just to start out. So I think slowly that will change. And but yeah, standing in front of those venture capitalists, I've heard some stories about what you get asked as a woman as opposed to if you were the same as a man.
That's a whole Pandora's box.
Yep.
That we don't even have time to get into that, but just, the places where you're asked to do meetings that would be non-threatening to a male entrepreneur and could be potentially threatening to a female entrepreneur in private homes and hot tubs. Anyway, we can move on from that. Natalia, do you have any, did you want to comment on that?
Luckily, in the conservation field, that's not as problematic because lots of our fundraising we do through proposals. So you write, you can be a woman or a man, it's just a proposal, or in the field. So when you are in the field, you are in your territory with your colleagues, with your team, and it's not like in the case of the venture capitalists. But on the other hand, I do think we do need to defeat those biases, unconscious biases, because a woman shouldn't have to behave like in a way or the other. And I did have great examples and role models within my organization of like extremely sweet and loving women that they could be fearless when they had to debate ideas or fight for budgets or make decisions. So I think the way to go is to be ourselves. We don't have to make ourselves be in a way or the other.
And what do you think the role of this movement, it's hard to talk about women in the workforce without bringing up Me Too and Time's Up. What impact do you expect that to have of sort of this awakening of something that was really there all along, but is really, bringing this into the light of day? Sunlight is the best disinfectant. How do you think that will be helpful in terms of clearing a path, in a way, for women in science? Natalia, do you want to take that?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a positive force because the next step is to set up rules and mechanisms that you can have in your research institute or organization to detect those behaviors early on and to have like some sort of alarm system where you can detect those behaviors and make the decisions that need to be made in an organization and not just let things sink until they explode like this. So I do think in our organizations we don't have that kind of problem, but I have seen in other academic organizations where even professors that I met are very scared to be called out. So what I hope is that it becomes within the system where it's not based on males being afraid, but a pattern of behavior where we can have these early alarms that if something is unacceptable and happens, you know what you have to do. You don't have to be embarrassed. You don't have to be afraid. And decisions are going to be taken so that person is removed or it suffers the consequences, right?
Nicole?
Yeah, I mean, just the transparency in people, I think stories or jokes or situations now all of a sudden are seeming very, very wrong and weird, and not just the women in the room, but the men in the room are, it's this heightened sense of, no, that's not right, that's great. And I think the Me Too movement has brought that together. And yeah, it'll get rid of a few bad eggs, and it has. But it's the more pervasive, kind of institutionalized, systematic problems that now need to be addressed. Yeah, through meetings and rules and yeah.
Great. So I want to move on to networking because this is one of the single most important things for success in so many industries, probably in every industry, and you deal a lot with networking. Can you talk a little bit about why it's so important and encourage this group of young women to do that from the get-go?
Yeah. So networking, especially for scientists, there are so many scientists who find it very difficult to get out of the lab and go to a social place and start conversations with random strangers. It's not compatible with a lot of personalities as scientists. I enjoy it actually, and I'm lucky that I enjoy it. But I think that anybody should enjoy it, and getting over that hurdle is the key to enjoying networking. You should see it as not an opportunity to go and ask everybody that you meet with, do you have any jobs that I can have? That's not how it works. And you need to put the effort in to learn from the people that you meet. And maybe you'll only talk to 2 people, but you'll learn about a new field or a new job that you didn't even know existed. So I give tips. Make business cards, you guys. Like, what's stopping you from having a business card? You've got personal email addresses. You can go to Staples, do it, and you'll get business cards from people, and you'll save them. And another tip, write the date on the business card that you're getting from the person that you've met, and a little thing to remind you about where you were or what you talked about. And just start keeping them. I mean, I have a Rolodex. Do you guys even know what a Rolodex is? I don't know. Yeah, I just find it easier to remember people's names and places. So I'm sure that there are very good apps now that you can take a picture of that business card and upload it into a database. But, yeah.
Okay, so before we cut to Q&A, one final, one answer, quick answer question. What's the one piece of advice, Natalia, we'll start with you. What's the one piece of advice you would give to someone in this audience about getting started in your career? Something that you didn't do or didn't know, but you know now and you want to impart.
Well, be perseverant and never take no for an answer. I have done that, and then I realized with time that was silly. There were no ceiling for me to grow. And follow your passions. That's really important for a long, healthy, professional life.
Great. Yeah, I mean, patience is something that you are going to need for a career in STEM. And I'll give an example with biology. You know, you can set up an experiment, you can work on it for a week, and then you've got your cells in a dish or on a plate, and you can drop it. And that happens. It's happened to me. It happens, right? This is why it takes years to get a degree. It takes years to gather enough data to publish a paper, and so scientists are then uniquely and inherently patient. So that then once you get out of the lab and you're tackling a business project or anything else, you can stay at that singularly focused with the long game in mind, and you can do it because setbacks, daily setbacks, weekly setbacks, 6-month setbacks, you can deal with it because that's what science training teaches you to do.
Great. So let's throw it out to some Q&A.
Hi, my name's Emily Donato. I'm a junior at Dexter Southfield School. I was wondering what you guys would have wanted to know when you were in high school that you would have benefited from now.
So I think when I was in high school, they were starting to work on sequencing the first genome. Like, that was a big deal. And there were some really cool things that were going on that I kind of wish I was reading about them and kind of keeping up to date, because I felt intimidated that I didn't know enough about biology yet to feel like I could learn, but you do. And so, you know, read the paper or try and find something that's going on in the field now and start to learn about it instead of just being like, well, I'll take just my AP biology that'll teach me, and then I'll go to college and I'll learn more and then I'll engage. But there are some really, really amazing things that are happening, new technologies that are being invented all the time. Have a look around, pick something, and then start becoming an expert at it, because you can learn a lot.
In my case, language would have been great to learn English earlier. I was going to learn French, but if you want to go work in the international conservation field, having a language is great. Spanish or French is that time in high school when you have a lot of time to do things, and later on you're not going to be having a lot of time to. And also, I do agree with the skills that having, if you are passionate for something, even could be photography or could be, you know, now a lot of people are into mapping and using geographic information systems to build maps. And that also, the learning curve is pretty steep. But if you can find in the area that you're interested some skill that you can devote time now, then that's great. And traveling is always a good advice for field biologists. Seeing the world is very good.
Hi, my name is Mara Euban. I'm a sophomore at Riverdale Kingsbridge Academy, and I wanted to know if your accomplishments have given you the feelings that you always expected, and if you feel that you will be satisfied with your work one day. Because I feel like many people always want more, and they're never satisfied with anything they do.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I am enjoying a lot of hard work paying off right now. This year has been really fun. We opened the facility, and I'm being recognized for the hard work that I put in. And we've got a website. It went live. We've got companies now in our space, and I am very happy about that, and I'm proud. And I feel very different right now than I did 3 years ago, where it seemed like it was so far away and not going to happen. So yeah, enjoy it. Celebrate those things. Yeah.
Well, in my case, I think I never imagined I was going to be doing what I'm doing when I was in Argentina. So I'm very grateful to all the opportunities. And of course, it took a lot of hard work. Some days are more boring than others. Sometimes then you think, oh, I'm doing lots of administrative stuff or other types of work that you don't like that much in order to do what you really like later on. So it takes a bit of patience, as you were saying before, to also understand that you're not going to be in ecstasy all the time. That some days will be better than others, but in the overall, I feel super lucky and happy with my team, with my everyday life, and with the career, and I can't wait to continue doing this work.
Hi, my name is Tara. I'm a senior, and I just wanted to ask how you got through the doubts you had on your career, and what advice you would give to the people who are having doubts about what they're planning to go into, their future career.
Yeah, I think something that we didn't mention that's an extremely important part about your careers in science is having mentors. And I think seeking out advice from other people, whether it's your peers or your teachers or these mentors who are a step ahead of you and can give advice. I know it can be difficult to do. It takes effort. It's you'd rather just put your head in your books and keep going. But this kind of self-reflection and asking for advice is very, very important. And I don't think anybody could just go from one job to the other without asking questions and support. Where are you going to go to grad school if you're going to go to grad school? Ask people what your first job after college. That's going to shape your career. But ask for advice.
Well, I would say first that having doubts is normal, healthy, and having had a major crisis where I almost quit all I was doing and went to do something else. At that age, I thought whatever I decided then, it was going to be the rest of my life. And the burden of that decision was killing me. So when I understood that you can always change and you can always also seek for help, and having doubts is good for you, because otherwise you are like a robot, right? So once you first kind of understand and are good with yourself in the fact that you can doubt, and that's normal, and you don't have to know right now what you want to do, and then you can try something and change, then I think that's my advice, having gone through that search myself, that I will give you right now. And of course, finding peers and people that are just asking questions and going for people and asking questions like your friend asked before, what's your daily life? Are you happy with it? What was your first job after you finished college? And those sort of things can give you an idea of how that type of job is going to look like in real life.
My name is Joan. I'm a high school senior at High Tech High School in North Bergen, New Jersey. And several of us in here are high school seniors about to enter the crazy college world. And my question is, what's your advice for those who kind of don't know what to do with their bachelor's degree? You wonderful ladies both got your doctoral degrees. How'd you know? Like, what kind of made you want to pursue it?
Yeah, and one thing I really enjoyed college and the liberal arts element of it. So, you know, I was a biology major, but I took art history and German and Russian history and, you know, read the Iliad. And at Chicago, it's this kind of great books thing that you do. But, you know, I think embrace that too, because once you start on, once you graduate and you start as a scientist, whatever STEM field it is, you get super specialized. And so make the most of those other courses and while you're in college.
I would give exactly the same advice. Unfortunately, where I study, you have to choose right after high school a super specialized degree. So that was part of my crisis, right? It was, oh my God, is life going to be like this forever? But I think having a diversity of subjects and exploring, and like you can, you know, fall in love with a topic and then with the next, and until you find your path and you allow yourself the freedom to kind of be drifted to your path. So that would be also an advice, that you explore. You don't just stay with one single topic that you think you like, because later on you will be able to do that and specialize.
Well, we're out of time, but thank you so much to Natalia and Nicole for joining us this evening. And if you'd like more information on Gaines, please go to www.gainesnetwork.org, and we'll see you next time on Build. Thanks, guys.